Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 1. Children of the Gods, Part 1. Beneath a mountain, hidden under layers of steel and concrete, lies a vast underground base humming softly under fluorescent lights. In the center of its main chamber stands a massive ring, metallic, ancient, and silent. The scientists who once studied it have retired or moved on. To the guards, it's nothing more than a relic from a project long buried under paperwork. The air is still, broken only by the hum of machines and the echo of footsteps. Then, suddenly, the ring begins to move. Giant clamps rotate and lock one by one with heavy metallic clicks. A surge of energy ripples outward, and the room floods with blinding blue light. The center transforms into what looks like liquid glass, shimmering and alive. The guards freeze. Moments later, armored figures step through, tall, disciplined, faces hidden behind gold masks shaped like serpents. They move as one. Weapons fire fills the room. It's over in seconds. The intruders vanish back into the light, taking one woman with them. The surface collapses into darkness, leaving only the smell of burnt air and fear. By morning, Colonel Jack O'Neill is called back to the base he thought he had left behind forever. He walks the steel corridors like someone returning to a memory he doesn't want to face. General Hammond greets him with quiet urgency. The gate opened, hostiles came through, and someone was taken. O'Neill listens, his expression unchanged, but his eyes tighten. He knows what that means. Years ago, he led the first mission through the gate. The official story said he destroyed the planet on the other side. But that was never true. The people there were human, innocent. He couldn't do it. He never detonated the bomb. One man from his team, Dr. Daniel Jackson, chose to stay. A new team is formed in haste, combining soldiers and scientists. Among them is Captain Samantha Carter, sharp-minded and confident, a physicist who understands the gate in a way few can. She explains that each symbol on the ring represents a constellation, and together they form coordinates in space. Dialing them connects 2 points instantly, folding space itself. Wormhole travel, she says, her eyes bright with excitement. O'Neill listens quietly, then gives a single nod. Let's see it. The machinery roars to life, the chevrons glow orange, and the last symbol locks in place. The room shakes. A whoosh of energy fills the air as the shimmering blue surface bursts to life again. The team steps forward and disappears. Heat hits them immediately. Sand stretches in every direction beneath a white, merciless sun. In the distance, a settlement rises, stone buildings half buried by dunes. O'Neill leads the team forward, alert but curious. And then, from between the stone arches, Daniel Jackson appears. Thinner, tanned, but unmistakably alive. He greets them with a broad smile that carries both relief and joy. The reunion is warm, almost surreal. He introduces the people he's been living with. Kind villagers who speak in an ancient dialect, worship old gods, and live humble lives beneath an endless sky. Among them is Shari, Daniel's wife. For a while, everything is calm. Night falls. The desert cools under a sea of bright stars. Then, in the distance, something breaks that calm. A massive ship descends silently through the clouds, casting silver light across the sand. The villagers scatter in fear. Moments later, the gate activates again. Blue light floods the darkness as soldiers in gold armor march through. They move with precision, seizing people one by one. Shari screams as she's dragged away. Squara, the young man O'Neill sees almost as a son, tries to fight but is captured too. O'Neill fires, but the attackers are too fast, too strong. In seconds, they vanish back through the gate with their captives. The night is left in smoke and silence. Back on Earth, the truth is undeniable. The Stargate isn't a bridge between two worlds. It's part of an entire network connecting countless planets. Daniel's notes and the carvings he found confirm it. General Hammond makes a decision. The Stargate program will continue, not as a relic, but as an active operation. Exploration, defense, and discovery will all fall under its command. The first team, designated SG-1, will be led by O'Neill, with Carter and Daniel by his side. Their mission: to find the missing, to bring them home, and to face whatever awaits beyond the stars. A surviving soldier from the first attack recalls seeing the symbols the enemy used when they dialed the gate. His memory is blurred, but it's enough. Carter and Daniel work together to fill in the missing coordinates. When the final chevron locks, the familiar roar of the gate fills the room. O'Neill and his team step through once more. They arrive in a place that feels different, colder, silent. Smooth corridors of stone stretch in all directions. They don't make it far before being surrounded by guards. Their weapons are taken, and they're marched into a massive hall dominated by a single throne. The man seated there looks human, but is clearly not. His eyes glow with an unnatural golden light, and his voice rolls through the air with practiced power. He calls himself a god. Daniel recognizes the truth. He's one of the Goa'uld, a parasitic species that takes human hosts. And beside him stands Shari, her eyes glowing with the same light. She's alive, but her mind is no longer her own. Daniel's world collapses in that moment of understanding. Among the guards stands a warrior named TLC, tall and stoic, a symbol carved into his forehead. He has served these false gods his entire life. But doubt has been growing within him for years. When O'Neill meets his eyes, something passes between them, unspoken but real. When the order comes to execute the prisoners, TLC hesitates. Then, in one decisive move, he turns his weapon and fires against his own men. Chaos erupts. "Come with me," he says quietly, "if you want freedom." The team runs through the corridors, alarms blaring. Carter works the controls, dialing the gate as Daniel shouts the coordinates. TLC covers their retreat, his weapon firing bursts of energy down the hall. O'Neill leads them through as the gate bursts open in a storm of light. They dive through, chased by fire. Back at the base, they tumble onto the concrete floor, alive but shaken. Guards surround them. TLC drops his weapon and stands tall. "I have nowhere else to go," he says. O'Neill studies him for a moment, then nods. "Then you're with us." There's no celebration, no relief, just quiet resolve. Shari and Skyra are gone. But now there's a team ready to follow their trail. Carter turns her attention to the gate's readings, Daniel catalogs symbols, and O'Neill plans their next move. TLC sits apart, a man who traded a life of obedience for one of uncertainty. Together they stand before the silent ring that hums faintly in the dark. The universe has opened, and SG-1 has already stepped through. Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 2. Children of the Gods, Part 2. The room is chaos. Energy fire cuts through the air as TLC turns against his own soldiers. For years he served the so-called gods without question, but the sight of terrified captives finally pushes him to act. His staff weapon roars, sending bursts of light across the hall. O'Neill shouts for the others to move. Carter grabs Daniel by the arm, and together they sprint through clouds of smoke toward the gate chamber. Behind them, TLC fights like a wall come alive, measured, unshaken, determined to make his betrayal count. At the control platform, Carter races through symbols she's memorized. Her voice is steady, her hands fast. The chevrons lock one by one, the familiar rumble building. Daniel yells the final coordinates, barely heard above the alarms. The gate blossoms into its liquid surface, flooding the room with blue light. They run. Guards appear at the far end, shouting orders, but TLC stays behind for a heartbeat longer, covering their retreat. The moment he dives through, the light collapses, and just like that, they're gone. On Earth, the alarm klaxons wail as the Stargate activates. Security teams flood the room, weapons ready. Then, through the light, figures tumble out. O'Neill first, then Carter, Daniel, and finally TLC. The gate snaps shut behind them. For a second, nobody moves. The returning team looks battered, covered in dust, but alive. TLC stands tall, hands empty, eyes calm. "I have nowhere else to go," he says simply. Hammond studies him from the observation deck, unsure whether to see an enemy or a miracle. Debriefings stretch into hours. Medical teams check every member of SG-1 for contamination. TLC is placed under armed guard, though he doesn't resist. He answers questions directly, describing the Goa'uld, the parasites that live inside human hosts and rule entire worlds through fear. He explains that each of their gods is just another host for the same species, powerful through technology, not divinity. O'Neill listens, jaw clenched, as TLC speaks of countless humans enslaved across the galaxy. Daniel, sitting quietly, only asks one question. Then Shari and Skyra, they're hosts now, aren't they? TLC nods once. The truth is heavier than any weapon. Meanwhile, the base feels less like a fortress and more like a starting point for something vast. Engineers reinforce the gate room. Scientists swarm the computers, and Hammond's office fills with maps, logs, and orders stamped classified. The Stargate program is officially permanent. SG-1 is no longer an experiment. It's humanity's front line. In the quiet of the infirmary, O'Neill checks on his team. Carter sits nearby, half asleep over a notepad filled with gate diagnostics. Daniel hasn't stopped writing, tracing every memory of the temple where Shari was taken. TLC remains seated on the bed opposite, motionless except for the faint rise and fall of his chest. He seems at peace, but his eyes never rest. O'Neill finally breaks the silence. You did the right thing back there. TLC looks up. Many of my people would not agree. O'Neill shrugs. Then it's their turn to catch up. Days pass. Security tests, interviews, new uniforms. Everything moves fast. TLC volunteers information about Jaffa training, weapon design, and gate codes. His knowledge confirms what Hammond feared. The Goa'uld have thousands of worlds under control, each guarded by warriors like him. Yet one detail offers hope. TLC explains that not every world serves willingly. Some rebel, some hide, and a few are free. That's where SG-1 must start. When the first mission list appears, O'Neill studies it quietly. So many unknown names. So many worlds. Carter walks in with a small smile. Looks like we're explorers now, she says. He answers, let's not forget we're rescuers first. Daniel joins them, carrying a folder filled with translations. He's found symbols that might lead to the world where Shari and Skyra were taken. It's a fragile lead, but it's all they have. Hammond gives the order. SG-1, prepare to deploy. Hours later, the gate hums again. This time the base runs like a machine. Teams in uniform line the control room. Technicians monitor readings, and the floor vibrates as the wormhole opens. Daniel adjusts his pack. Carter checks her weapon. TLC stands silently at O'Neill's side. You sure about this? Hammond asks from above. O'Neill gives a crooked grin. Not even a little. Then he turns, leading his team into the light. They emerge on another world. Lush, humid, filled with the sound of unseen insects. The air smells of rain. They move carefully, weapons low, eyes sharp. Daniel points out ancient markings carved into nearby stones. Another civilization touched by the Goa'uld. They've been everywhere, Carter mutters. TLC nods grimly. They believe themselves eternal. O'Neill scans the tree line. Let's prove them wrong. Not long after, they encounter a group of locals, frightened, curious, dressed in rough cloth. Through halting translation, Daniel learns that this world once fought its oppressors and paid the price. Entire villages were destroyed. The survivors hide in forests and ruins. When they see TLC, some back away in fear, recognizing the mark on his forehead. He doesn't flinch. I was one of them, he says softly. Now I fight against them. The words aren't for the villagers, they're for himself. The team spends the night gathering information. Around a small fire, Daniel records stories of rebellion and loss. Carter studies alien technology scavenged from the ruins. O'Neill sits apart, eyes on the stars that glitter unfamiliar above. Each one might be another gate, another battle waiting to happen. For the first time, he admits to himself that this won't be a short campaign. It's the beginning of something much larger. At dawn, SG-1 returns to the gate. The villagers watch silently as the symbols light up. Before stepping through, Daniel turns to them. If we succeed, he says, one day you'll be free too. No one answers, but the faintest hope flickers in their faces. The team vanishes into the blue. Back on Earth, Hammond receives them with quiet pride. You brought back knowledge, he says, and allies. That's a start. O'Neill nods, tired but satisfied. Daniel closes his notebook and whispers. And somewhere out there, Shari heard us coming. TLC stands beside the gate, hands clasped behind his back, looking up at the metallic ring that changed everything. This is only the first step, he says. O'Neill glances over. Yeah, he replies, but it's a damn good one. The lights dim. The gate powers down. For now, the mountain is quiet again. but everyone knows it won't stay that way for long. The universe is open and SG-1 is ready. Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 5, The Broca Divide. P3X 797 looks ordinary at first. A blue sky above, ruins below, but the moment SG-1 steps out, the planet shows its divide. One half glows under constant sunlight, the other lies in deep, cold night. The air itself feels split between warmth and frost. They head toward the dark side, flashlights cutting through mist, and soon realize they're not alone. Figures rush from the shadows, humanoid, wild, their faces twisted with heavy brows and rage. O'Neill fires a warning burst. TLC meets them with calm precision until the attackers scatter. Daniel kneels beside one body and sees the truth. They're human. Changed, devolved. Guided to a nearby walled city, SG-1 meets the untouched, civilized descendants of the same people. Their leader explains that the touched live in the darkness, cursed by the gods. To be infected is to be cast out. Daniel senses a disease, not a curse. Carter collects samples. The council allows them to study it, grateful but wary. Before dusk the gates close, sealing them in safety while the world outside howls. Back on Earth, the team hands the samples to Dr. Janet Fraser. She works fast, comparing blood types, histamine levels, and enzymes. Nothing matches any known virus. The base runs routine checks, the gate stands quiet, and for a few hours it feels normal again, until people start fighting. A guard forgets orders, a scientist lashes out for no reason. Carter's speech falters mid-sentence. O'Neill rubs his temples, hearing an echo that isn't there. Fraser's scans show brain activity sliding toward primitive patterns. Whatever infected the touched has come through the gate. Hammond orders a lockdown. The iris seals, corridors close, and the mountain becomes its own quarantine zone. Fraser and her medics race against time, testing antivirals, then antihistamines. Each fails. The transformation accelerates. Language collapses. Instincts take over. Carter resists longest, but finally breaks, lunging at a guard, eyes feral. O'Neill can't bring himself to fire. Not her, he mutters as security drags her away. It's the first time he sounds afraid. Only TLC remains unaffected. His gold symbiote protects him, giving Fraser a control sample. She isolates differences in immune response and histamine overload. The pattern fits an allergic cascade more than infection. Daniel, desperate for more clues, persuades Hammond to let him and TLC return to the planet's bright side. There, the untouched insist their purity is proof of divine favor. Daniel counters with logic. Both tribes share bloodlines. The leader refuses to believe until TLC points out fresh tracks from people recently exiled. Your gods did not choose, he says. They divided you by chance. In the dark region, they find a woman wearing a city medallion. She must have transformed only recently. Daniel records everything, convinced the process can reverse. They bring her sample home, barely escaping another swarm of the touched before the gate closes. Fraser's analysis confirms it. High histamine levels trigger the regression. She crafts an aggressive antihistamine formula paired with an immune stabilizer. The test subject has to be human, infected, and strong enough to endure it. That means Carter. O'Neill agrees with a nod that looks more like surrender. The injection hits her system hard, but minutes later she stabilizes. When her eyes clear, she whispers, "Did I hurt anyone?" O'Neill forces a grin. Just scared the hell out of them. Within hours the cure spreads through the base. Fraser and her staff move like a single organism, administering doses, tracking vitals, bringing people back. As sanity returns, exhaustion sets in, but the numbers finally make sense. Hammond approves the antidote's deployment to P3X 797. Daniel and TLC escort the medics, distributing the serum to both tribes at the city gates. The untouched resist at first, unwilling to let the cursed back inside, but Daniel insists they watch. One man changes before their eyes, rage fading, posture straightening, words returning. Silence follows, then applause born of shock. By nightfall, barriers fall with it. The council signs a new decree. The touched are family, not outcasts. O'Neill refuses any ceremony. "We're just the delivery guys," he tells them, and turns toward the gate. Carter lingers, watching children from both tribes play together for the first time. You know, she says, for once, the science actually fixed something. O'Neill answers, yeah, don't get used to it. Back on Earth, Fraser files her report, epidemic contained, treatment confirmed. Hammond signs off with rare praise for the new doctor. Daniel adds a note to the mission log. A civilization once split by fear, now reunited by reason. TLC, ever measured, calls it a reminder that knowledge is the only true weapon. When the lights dim in the gate room, O'Neill pauses before the silent ring. He's seen what the wrong microbe can do to a good team, how quickly order turns to chaos. He murmurs to no one, "Good work, Doc," and heads for the elevator. The base settles into quiet. Somewhere beyond, another world waits, but for now, Earth holds the line between light and dark. Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 6, The First Commandment. The gate opens to a world that feels like an oven, dry air, searing light, and a wind that tastes of dust. SG-1 steps out and immediately shields their eyes. The readings say the atmosphere is breathable, but barely. O'Neill checks his gear, Carter scans for energy signatures, and Daniel stares at a line of crude crosses planted in the ground ahead. Each one marks a grave. This isn't a good start. Hammond's orders were simple. Locate SG-9, the team that went missing 2 weeks ago. They were mapping potential safe worlds for trade. The last message said their commanding officer, Captain Jonas Hansen, had taken control of the local population for security reasons. Then the transmission stopped. Hansen also happens to be someone Carter once knew. No one has to say it. She's already thinking it. They hike toward the village visible through the heat haze. On the way, they meet a young native named Jamala, frightened and half-starved. He calls Hansen the god of the sky and warns them to stay away. Daniel convinces him to guide them instead. What they find confirms every bad feeling. An entire settlement of humans forced into labor, quarrying stone under brutal sun to build a massive temple for their new god. Hansen rules from its unfinished steps, armed with earth weapons and the blind devotion of the desperate. O'Neill watches from cover. He's lost it, he mutters. TLC agrees. The villagers bow as Hansen appears, calm, confident, wrapped in white cloth that makes him glow against the harsh light. He preaches about salvation through obedience, his voice steady and magnetic. When one worker collapses, Hansen orders another to bury him alive for defiance. Carter's knuckles whiten around her rifle. She steps forward, but O'Neill's hand on her arm stops her. Not yet, he says. At night, they infiltrate the temple site. Daniel sketches symbols covering the walls, drawings of storms, light, and fire descending from the sky. He's built himself into their myth, he says. He uses their fear to rule. Carter finds SG-9's remaining members imprisoned nearby. One is too weak to speak. The other whispers that Hansen believes he's been chosen by the gate itself. The planet's constant heat, its strange radiation, all feed his delusion. He thinks he's cleansing them, the man gasps. Carter feels the weight of every decision she didn't make when she knew him. Hansen had always been brilliant, intense, certain. Now that certainty has calcified into madness. She tells O'Neill, he won't stop unless I make him. O'Neill looks at her for a long second. Then make him, he says. They plan at dawn. TLC will disable the power supply Hansen's stolen from the Stargate generator. Daniel will reach the villagers and tell them the truth. There are no gods, only men who pretend. O'Neill and Carter will confront Hansen directly. Simple, dangerous, and maybe the only shot they have. The execution begins perfectly wrong. Hansen's guards spot Daniel before he reaches the crowd. He's dragged before Hansen, accused of blasphemy, and beaten until he can't stand. Hansen orders a public punishment to prove his power. O'Neill steps forward from the shadows. That's enough, he says, rifle steady. The crowd murmurs, unsure which god to believe. Hansen smiles, unshaken. You can't kill a god, Jack. Maybe not, O'Neill answers, but I can sure ruin his day. While they argue, Carter approaches from behind. She calls his name softly. For a moment, Hansen's confidence flickers. He remembers her. You believed in me once, he says. You saw what I was meant to do. Her voice is steady. I saw what you wanted to be. This isn't it. He reaches for her, like a preacher reaching for redemption. She raises her weapon, but doesn't fire. If you're a god, she says, save yourself. TLC triggers the generator overload. Sparks flash across the temple's core, the false miracles unraveling. The villagers panic, pointing at the broken sky machine. Daniel, bruised but alive, shouts above them. He lied to you. He's just a man. The crowd begins to turn. Hansen tries to command them back with promises and threats, but his voice no longer sounds divine. One of his own guards lowers his weapon. Then another. The illusion cracks, and fear rushes in. Hansen lunges at Carter, grabbing for her weapon. They struggle on the edge of the temple steps. O'Neill moves to intervene, but Carter throws Hansen backward with the strength of fury and gravity combined. He falls into the pit below, vanishing in dust and silence. She stands frozen, breathing hard, eyes wide, not triumphant, just empty. O'Neill rests a hand on her shoulder. He made his choice, he says quietly. You made yours. By afternoon, the villagers are free. Daniel organizes a small group to teach them the basics of the gate so they can protect themselves. TLC helps dismantle the weapon stockpile. Carter and O'Neill watch from the ridge as the temple burns in the distance. He wanted to be their god, O'Neill says. Now they'll have to learn to be their own people. Carter doesn't answer. She just stares at the smoke, the last trace of a man she once trusted. Back on Earth, Hammond debriefs the team with uncharacteristic gentleness. You did what you had to, he tells Carter. She nods, but says nothing. Fraser clears everyone medically, noting only mild dehydration and exhaustion. In her report, Carter writes the facts, mission success, locals liberated, but omits the personal history. O'Neill signs it without comment. Daniel adds a line of his own. Power offered as salvation always ends in ruin. That night, the base is quiet. The gate sits dark, its surface reflecting faint blue from the emergency lights. O'Neill passes by the control room and finds Carter there, staring at it. You okay? He asks. Eventually, she says. He nods. No questions, no advice. They stand there in silence for a while. Two soldiers, one door, and 1,000 more worlds waiting on the other side. The next mission brief arrives at dawn. No one talks about Hansen again. They just step up to the ramp, ready for whatever waits beyond, knowing now how thin the line is between command and worship. SG-1 disappears into the light, leaving the mountain silent once more. Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 7, Cold Lazarus. The planet looks dead at first glance, a wasteland of pale sand and shattered crystal fields stretching to every horizon. SG-1 steps out into thin, cold air that smells faintly metallic. No vegetation, no life signs, no ruins. Just jagged blue spires jutting from the ground like frozen lightning. Daniel calls it beautiful in the way deserts are beautiful, lonely and honest. O'Neill doesn't answer. He's been quiet since they left Earth. They spread out to survey the area. Carter collects mineral readings, fascinated by the crystal's energy signatures. TLC warns that something feels wrong. His symbiote senses no danger, but his instincts disagree. O'Neill touches one of the crystal formations, and it reacts. A flash of blinding light knocks him backward. When the others reach him, he's lying still, heart barely beating. They rush him to the gate, but before they can leave, another O'Neill steps from the crystals. He looks perfect, same uniform, same voice, but he's not the same man. None of them see him appear. The copy watches silently as the team disappears through the gate, carrying the real O'Neill's body. Back on Earth, the infirmary bursts into motion. Fraser's team stabilizes O'Neill, who wakes confused but alive. He doesn't remember the last minutes on the planet. No one notices that a second version of him has come through the gate later, quietly blending into the base as if he belongs there. The double walks the halls without purpose until he reaches a mirror and flinches at his own reflection. Something inside him hums faintly, blue light flickering beneath the skin. Meanwhile, Fraser clears SG-1 for duty, though she warns O'Neill to rest. He insists he's fine. Hammond accepts it but orders further analysis of the crystal fragments Carter brought back. They emit low-level energy pulses that almost resemble brainwave patterns. Daniel suggests they might be sentient. Carter nods. They could be alive, just not the way we understand it. That night, the imposter O'Neill leaves the base. The security staff waves him through. His credentials check out. He walks through Colorado Springs like a ghost rediscovering a past life. When he reaches a small suburban house, he stops at the fence, frozen. Inside, a woman tends a garden while a young boy rides a bike across the driveway. The boy's laugh hits him like a shockwave. Charlie, he whispers. His son's name. The boy who died years ago. Back at the mountain, the real O'Neill dreams of the same moment. His son, the accident, the silence that followed. He wakes sweating, angry at himself for remembering. Carter finds energy anomalies near the gate room and begins running diagnostics. 2 access logs show O'Neill's code being used hours apart. Sir, she tells Hammond. Either the computer glitched or Colonel O'Neill's been in 2 places at once. The double spends the night watching his family from a distance. When his ex-wife, Sarah, finally notices him, she freezes. He looks real, sounds real, but there's something off in his stillness. He speaks gently, asking if Charlie is home. Her confusion turns to horror as she realizes what he's asking. She tells him their son is gone. The word lands like a wound. Blue light flickers again, brighter this time. I didn't know, he says, voice breaking with alien confusion. I just wanted to make it right. Security finds him minutes later, traced by Carter's energy readings. The real O'Neill arrives as the imposter steps back towards Sarah's porch. For a moment, the two stand face to face, identical except for the expression in their eyes. The real one is exhausted, human, guarded. The other looks like grief made into shape. Who are you? O'Neill asks. The double answers, we are memory. We felt your pain when you touched us. We wanted to understand. The truth unfolds quickly. The crystals are a species of energy beings. When O'Neill touched one, it tried to heal what it thought was physical damage but absorbed his emotional pain instead. The copy was born from that, an echo trying to fix a wound that can't be fixed. The energy overload nearly killed the original. The copy's own structure is now breaking apart under the weight of human sorrow. O'Neill takes control of the situation with uncharacteristic calm. He orders everyone else to stand down and lets the duplicate speak freely. You loved your son, the being says. You carry his death like a shadow. O'Neill doesn't argue. Yeah, he says softly. That's how it works. The copy looks towards Sarah's house again. I thought if I could bring him back, you would be whole. O'Neill's voice hardens, not with anger, but truth. You can't fix that. Nobody can. Carter realizes the duplicate's energy levels are destabilizing fast. If it collapses here, it could level the neighborhood. They need to get him back through the gate. O'Neill persuades the being to return, promising he'll remember that the pain means his son mattered. The copy studies him for a long moment, then nods. Then you are already healed more than you know. At the planet site, the team watches as the blue figure kneels among its own kind. The crystals pulse in unison, accepting it back. For a moment, the desert glows with soft light. Then the field goes still. O'Neill stands in silence. Daniel starts to speak, but stops when O'Neill raises a hand. Let's go home, he says. Back on Earth, Fraser finishes her report. Subject survived contact. Lifeform energy stable, non-hostile. Hammond approves limited study of the samples. Carter closes her tablet and glances at O'Neill. You okay, sir? He doesn't answer right away. I think so, he says finally. At least, more than before. Later, O'Neill visits Sarah's house one last time. He doesn't knock. He just watches from across the street as she locks the door, turns out the lights, and disappears inside. He smiles faintly, not with happiness, but peace. The past is still there, but it's quieter now. He turns away and drives back toward the mountain. When SG-1 gathers for their next briefing, O'Neill listens more than he speaks. The gate hums, waiting for coordinates. Hammond gives the go. As the blue surface bursts to life, the reflection catches O'Neill's face. 2 images overlapping for a split second, man and echo. He steps forward without hesitation. Behind him, the room goes still again, the air filled with the sound of a memory finally letting go. Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 8, The Nox. The Stargate opens onto a world that feels like paradise. Massive trees reach hundreds of feet into the sky, their canopies glowing faintly with natural light. Air thick with mist carries the scent of flowers and rain. Birds, or something like them, sing in layered tones that sound almost orchestral. SG-1 steps through slowly, weapons down, scanning the clearing. For once, it looks peaceful. O'Neill mutters, "Weird. No one's shooting at us." Daniel smiles. "Maybe we got lucky." TLC replies simply, "Luck does not last." Their mission is to locate a creature the Goa'uld have been hunting, a being rumored to possess advanced healing powers. Intelligence suggests capturing one might help Earth understand how to protect itself. O'Neill doesn't like hunting anything intelligent, but orders are orders. Carter sets up a motion tracker. The readings show something large, moving quickly through the forest. They fan out to flank it. The piece ends with the sound of a ship descending, Goa'uld technology, unmistakable and menacing. The Jaffa patrol appears through the trees, led by Apophis's lieutenant, a warrior named Shakel. "So much for luck," O'Neill growls. A firefight erupts. Energy blasts tear through foliage, setting branches ablaze. The creature they were tracking bolts past, a blur of color, then gone. In the chaos, O'Neill takes a hit and drops. TLC and Carter return fire until the Jaffa retreat. Daniel kneels beside O'Neill's still body. "He's gone," he whispers. Then the forest changes. The air vibrates with low harmonics, and figures emerge from the mist. Tall, graceful beings dressed in woven leaves and light. Their movements are calm, almost slow motion. One kneels beside O'Neill, places a hand over his wound, and closes his eyes. A glow passes through the body. Moments later, O'Neill gasps, alive. Daniel stares, speechless. The being rises and says softly, "There is no death." The Nox, as they call themselves, are unlike anything SG-1 has seen. They don't speak of technology, though everything about them suggests mastery of it. Their homes hover in trees without visible support, and their people move with quiet purpose. Their leader, a serene figure named Laia, invites the team to rest and recover. Daniel thanks her repeatedly. O'Neill, still processing his own death, sits apart. "You could have told us you could do that," he mutters. Laia only smiles. "You were not ready to hear." O'Neill insists they must warn the Nox about the Goa'uld. Laia seems unconcerned. "The Goa'uld cannot harm us," she says. TLC frowns. "They will return with greater numbers." Laia replies gently, "Then we will hide." To SG-1, it sounds naive, even suicidal. To the Nox, it's wisdom. Violence, they say, feeds on itself. Their strength lies in peace. Carter runs discreet scans on the village and is stunned. No visible energy readings, yet cloaking fields surround the area, invisible to the eye. "They're way beyond us," she whispers to Daniel. "Maybe beyond anyone." Daniel agrees, but warns her to stop scanning. "They see everything we do." She lowers the device, suddenly embarrassed. O'Neill, however, can't let it go. "We can't just leave them to die," he says. "If we can convince them to fight back, maybe we can all win." Daniel shakes his head. "You can't protect people who don't want protection, Jack." O'Neill walks off, muttering something about pacifist fairy tales. At dawn, Apophis's forces return. Shakel leads them again, searching for both the Nox and SG-1. O'Neill plans an ambush despite Laia's objections. "You cannot defeat them with weapons," she warns. "We must try," he answers. The Nox disappear into the forest as SG-1 sets their trap. When the firefight begins, it's one-sided. The Jaffa advance with overwhelming force. Carter shouts coordinates. TLC counters from the flank. Daniel drags a wounded villager to safety. O'Neill goes down again. Another energy blast to the chest. The others barely pull back before being surrounded. Then everything stops. The Jaffa freeze, mid-step. The forest hums again. When the light fades, all the Jaffa are gone. O'Neill wakes with no wound, staring up at the same canopy. Laia stands over him. "You see now," she says softly. "There is no need for your weapons." He sits up, dazed. "What did you do?" "We moved them," she says simply, "to where they cannot harm us." "You mean you let them go?" he demands. "Yes." It infuriates him. The helplessness, the sense that none of his training applies here. "They'll come back," he insists. Laia nods. "And we will move again. The circle will close." Daniel steps in. "Jack, maybe that's the point. Maybe they don't measure victory the way we do." O'Neill doesn't answer. He's too busy watching the villagers rebuild as if nothing happened. Before they leave, Laya takes them to a clearing. She gestures upward, and the forest itself shimmers out of sight, revealing vast floating cities cloaked in light. You see only what we allow, she says. You seek knowledge, but not understanding. Carter's mouth falls open. You could hide entire worlds. Laya smiles. We already do. O'Neill thanks her for saving them, though the words sound small compared to what she's done. She touches his shoulder lightly. The young do not always understand the old, she says, but they must still learn. He nods, humbled. Guess we've got a lot to learn. When SG-1 steps back through the gate, the base feels colder, heavier. Hammond listens to their report with disbelief. You're telling me they can make armies disappear? He asks. Carter answers carefully. Not with weapons, sir. With something else. Daniel adds, maybe wisdom. Later, in the locker room, O'Neill sits on the bench, staring at nothing. They could have wiped out the Goa'uld, he says quietly. Instead, they hide. TLC answers, perhaps they understand what victory costs. O'Neill lets out a breath, half sigh, half laugh. Yeah, maybe we're the ones who don't. The gate powers down, leaving only the hum of machines. Somewhere, on a world cloaked in endless forest, the Nox move unseen and unharmed. SG-1 logs the planet as non-hostile and restricted. Earth's first encounter with a civilization older, wiser, and infinitely gentler than itself. For the first time, O'Neill writes in his mission notes, we were the primitive ones. Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 10, Thor's Hammer. The gate opens to thunder. Not from the sky. This thunder rumbles from the mountains themselves, echoing through a valley lined with stone pillars carved in runes. Lightning flashes far above, illuminating endless green hills and the jagged silhouette of a great fortress. SG-1 steps out, rain soaking their gear within seconds. O'Neill shields his eyes, glancing up. Anybody else feel like we just walked into a Viking postcard? Daniel smiles through the downpour. That's because we did. They've come to Cimmeria, a planet mentioned in ancient Norse texts, supposedly protected by the god Thor. Daniel believes the myths were inspired by an alien who once defended early humans against the Goa'uld. Hammond's orders are simple. Confirm whether the legend hides real technology. TLC, however, is uneasy. If Thor protects this world, he says, then he may protect it from me. Before they can discuss it, the ground hums. A column of light descends from the nearest stone arch. It sweeps over them like a scanner, then fixes on TLC. Carter's instruments spike with readings she's never seen. The light envelopes TLC, and O'Neill, who grabs his arm in reflex, then vanishes. Both are gone. Daniel and Carter shout their names, but only Rain answers. O'Neill and TLC reappear in darkness. The air smells of stone and dust. Their flashlights reveal ancient walls lined with glowing blue symbols. Guess we triggered something, O'Neill mutters. TLC scans the walls with wary calm. A test, he says, for those who carry Goa'uld within. As if to prove him right, a holographic figure materializes before them. A tall, bearded man holding a hammer-shaped staff. You are within the Hall of Mjolnir, it announces. Here the enemies of the Asgard are judged. O'Neill raises an eyebrow. Great. Space Vikings. TLC doesn't smile. The voice continues. If the Goa'uld within you is innocent, you will be freed. If not, you will perish. A door slides open, revealing a maze of corridors. O'Neill sighs. And here I thought my day couldn't get worse. Above ground, Carter and Daniel race to the nearest village. They're met by locals dressed in rough leather and furs, true descendants of the Norse settlers. The leader, Gerwin, listens to their story and nods gravely. Thor guards this land, she says. The hammer protects us from the false gods. Daniel asks how to reach the hammer's chamber, but she warns them no one who enters returns. It is meant only for the unclean. Carter exchanges a worried look. That means TLC. Underground, O'Neill and TLC navigate the labyrinth. Strange creatures lurk in the shadows. Half-human, half-Goa'uld hybrids, trapped for centuries. One attacks, voice snarling in multiple tones. TLC fires his staff weapon, vaporizing it. It was once a host, he says quietly. The parasite died, but the body lived. O'Neill grimaces. Then let's not end up as decor. They press deeper until they find a massive doorway pulsing with light. At its center stands an energy arch shaped like a hammer. TLC feels the symbiote writhe inside him. It calls to me, he says. Carter and Daniel, above, find ancient carvings depicting Thor not as a god, but as a being from the stars. Daniel deciphers the runes. He's one of the Asgard, a race protecting humans from the Goa'uld. The hammer is a weapon designed to destroy symbiotes. Carter's voice tightens. Then if we get TLC out, we might kill him in the process. Back below, O'Neill tries to activate the arch, hoping it opens a way out. Instead, energy lashes toward TLC, pinning him in agony. The symbiote's screams echo through the chamber. O'Neill dives forward, dragging him free. Hang on, big guy. The beam dies down, leaving scorch marks across the floor. TLC lies still, barely breathing. That thing was trying to kill you, O'Neill says. TLC replies weakly. It was trying to free me. They rest in a hollow near the wall. O'Neill bandages the burns with strips torn from his jacket. Next time I see Thor, he owes us an apology. TLC glances up. If he is what the legends say, he owes you nothing. Yeah, O'Neill mutters. That's what I'm afraid of. Meanwhile, Carter and Daniel convince Gerwin to guide them to the hammer's entrance. She hesitates, torn between faith and friendship, but agrees. The storm clears as they reach the monolith. Carter's scanner locates a weak energy point, an access tunnel. She uses a charge to blast it open. We're coming, sir, she whispers. Inside, O'Neill and TLC hear the explosion. Rescue party, O'Neill says with a grin. He helps TLC to his feet. Let's go meet them halfway. But the maze shifts. Walls slide silently, cutting off corridors and rearranging paths. That's cheating, O'Neill shouts at the ceiling. A voice answers, the test is not for you. Finally, they reach the central chamber again, this time with Daniel and Carter forcing their way through another passage. They reunite, relief palpable. Daniel studies the archway. The exit's through there, but it only opens once the symbiote is destroyed. O'Neill glares at him. Not happening. TLC shakes his head. If I stay, you will be free. Forget it, O'Neill snaps. We're all going home. Daniel spots a pattern on the runes, an override command. If we collapse the power source, the system shuts down, he says. Carter sets her detonator. The walls vibrate as the chamber overloads. Energy floods the room in a wave of blue light. The arch shatters, sending shards of plasma cascading through the air. When the light fades, the tunnel above reappears, an exit. They run for it as the structure collapses behind them. Outside, sunlight floods the valley. Gerwin kneels, whispering thanks to Thor. Daniel apologizes for destroying the hammer, but she shakes her head. Thor would understand mercy. Carter smiles faintly. Let's hope he agrees. Before leaving, they stand at the stone arch that started it all. Daniel traces a rune with his fingers. This world was safe because of the hammer, he says. Now it's open to the Goa'uld again. O'Neill looks at TLC. Then we'll just have to make sure the Goa'uld don't find it. TLC bows his head. I am in your debt. O'Neill pats his shoulder. You're part of the team. That's dead enough. Back on Earth, Hammond listens as Daniel explains the Asgard connection, a powerful race who might one day become allies. You think they're still out there? He asks. Carter nods. If Thor built that place, he's centuries ahead of us. And maybe watching. O'Neill smirks. Let's just hope he likes us better than his hammer did. The mission log ends with Daniel's final note. The Asgard once defended humanity from false gods. If they still exist, they may be the key to freeing us again. The gate powers down, its echo fading through the mountain. Somewhere far beyond, a god of thunder may have felt it. And for the first time, SG-1 begins to believe they're not fighting alone.